Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's another hobby video. Welcome back, everybody. And welcome back to my co-stars here, the old mattress, the vacuum cleaner, and the ironing board. And we're also joined by guest stars of a couple of old rugby shirts today. Same professional place, everyone. Same professional quality. We spare no expense. Well, folks, it's another hobby video. I said I would do one, another hobby vlog. Talking about stuff that I'm working on and things that I have plans to work on and just general happenings that's going on in the background. And I've got on the table here a bunch of stuff that's just vaguely related to what I've been working on. So, yeah, stuff and things and stuff. And I don't know where to start. I'm stalling because I don't actually know where to start. I think we'll start with the Space Marines, I think, first. Alright, I'm gonna throw out a little disclaimer first of all. There's lots of noise in the background, like you can hear a rushing water sound in the distance and maybe some loud music down below. It's because the rest of the family's furloughed this week. So there's loud music playing downstairs, someone is taking a shower next door. It's very noisy and I feel like a grumpy old man complaining about it, but nevertheless I put a high value on my privacy and my solitude and lack of loud noises. I really do. I always have, and at least I don't have kids, because then I would really would be on the verge of throwing myself off a cliff, I think, if that were the case. But anyway, right. Space Marines. Okay, so my ongoing project at the moment with my Space Marines is largely repainting them in the new scheme and rebasing them with the new basing scheme, and that's what I've been doing. At the back here, I've got some intercessors. There's a few too many sergeants in there, but this is just all the ones I had left over to do. But yes, intercessors. Here we go. In various forms. They're all. I have a variety of weapons for these guys, but I tend to just jumble them together and run them as regular bolt rifles. Even though I've got a mix of assault bolters in there and some stalker bolters and some regular bolt rifles, I just tend to mix them all together and then just run them as regular bolt rifle because I figure it averages out almost that way, right? Sure, that works, doesn't it? Probably. I don't know. But that's these guys redone. Like, all I've really done with these guys effectively is repainted a few bits on them, touched up a few details, redone the bases, that sort of thing. You know, brought them up to the slightly newer standard. I quite like this particular sergeant model. Actually, I have to admit, I'm a fan of this one. But yeah, I've got the yellow shoulder pads. Don't have the decals on there yet. I'm going to do the transfers later. I'm going to get them all out on the table and then just sit there for a couple of hours putting transfers on Marines is what I'm going to do. Mostly because I'm lazy right now and because I can't remember where I put the damn transfers. Actually, I need to find them again. They're in one of the many boxes of random bits of Warhammer crap that's lying around. But I don't remember which one I actually put them in. So, yeah. Not much else to say, really. As you can see, a lot of them have a sort of like tribal bits. I think these are from Cromlech, these sort of like teeth and fur bits and stuff like that. And that's part of the reason they got frequently... Plane's flaked off there, I think. That's part of the reason they got frequently mistaken for Space Wolves, I think, is because they had these bits on some of them. But then that's not because of the Space Wolves they have those. They have those because the guys with the tribal fetishes and fur pelts and things, they are the guys who are recruited from the northernmost polar region barbarian tribes of their homeworld of Hades. That's why they keep these. This tends to wear off as they get older and they advance further up into the chapter, and the more traditional Imperial fist way of doing things starts to rub off on them. But the newer recruits, they tend to sort of hang on to the tribal culture a bit until eventually it rubs off. After a few centuries, if they survive that long, you know, they kind of tend to ditch that stuff and adopt the culture of the chapter veterans a lot more. So if you see guys with like pelts and stuff on them in my Space Marine army, it's because they are relatively new guys who are just fresh out of the Scouts, and they're originally from a barbarian tribe on Hades. And that's why they have those. Because you'll notice some of them don't. In fact, most of them don't have those, but some of them do. So that's certainly a thing. Did some scouts as well. I got my scouts redone because scouts are useful and what have you. Much maligned, these models, by a lot of people. They call them hunchbacks and stuff. I don't think that's really fair. It's just the weird backpacks they wear, because if you look at him like that, he's not really a hunchback at all. Like if you line up his legs with where his head is and stuff like that, they look fine to me. I've always kind of liked the scout models, but a lot of people really hate these for some reason. I've got a bunch of the old metal ones as well, particularly metal sniper scouts, which I need to do at some point, and a couple of boxes of plastic sniper scouts as well. Come to think of it, I'm not mad keen on snipers as a concept in 40k though. I find them quite irritating to play against, so I tend not to want to inflict that on my opponents wherever possible. So, unless I'm playing against an army that requires you to seriously deal with their characters, I tend not to bother with snipers very much, which is why all these guys have bolt guns and a couple of heavy bolters and some shotguns. They're sort of more medium range scouts, honestly. So, I'd like to get some scouts with missile launchers though. That would be useful. Scouts with missile launchers. Hiding in cover again, they're 2+ save. That would be good. Anyway, scouts, sorted. Then we get to some stuff here which is brand new. As in, I painted it up completely new. It wasn't repainted. First things first is I've got these guys in Mark II iron armour. I've had these guys knocking around in the cupboard for years. Forge World used to sell these guys, they're resin. Forge World used to sell these dudes, these Mark II iron armour guys from the Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade, and they don't anymore. I can kind of tell why, because the sculpts are a bit gnarly in places, shall we say. The level of detail is not quite on par with the newer stuff that comes out these days, but hey. I wanted to include these guys because A, I had them in the cupboard, so whatever. But also B, because the image that inspired the paint scheme I used for the Revenants was actually of a dude in iron armour, like this. So the only difference really is the fact that the eye lens visor thing on mine is blue instead of red, and because these guys are veterans they have 2 yellow gauntlets instead of 1 yellow gauntlet. But aside from that, the stripe on the helmet, the yellow gauntlet, the yellow shoulder pad, it's all inspired by that. So I really wanted to paint up some iron armour guys in the scene from the illustration where I got the idea from in the first place. So that's why these guys are a thing, essentially. I quite like the way they've turned out. They're alright. Considering I didn't spend an awful lot of time painting them, I think they've turned out okay. It's a very quick, rough and ready tabletop standard sort of a deal. We think they're alright, and I quite like them. They're going to be Sternguard. They're going to be Sternguard veterans. So they'll be equipped with a combination of special issue bolt guns, which will I think they're AP-2 on a good day, not including like your combat doctrine stuff. So that's quite nice. You can get it up to AP-3 if you've got the I don't know what it's called, tactical doctrine. Is that what it's called? It's been ages since I played Space Marines. I think when you've got the tactical doctrine active, they'll go up to AP-3 bolt guns, which is nuts. That's like bolt guns with the same armor piercing as a power sword, basically, which is a little bit silly, but also I think could be really fun. So I got a blob of these guys, a little 10-man squad of these Sternguard veterans, to go with the other Sternguard veterans I've already got actually, who are in Mark IV armor. But these guys, they're equipped with lots of flamers. Let's see, I've got one flamer, combi flamer. He's got a combi flamer sergeant. Again, no transfers on him yet. There will be a big chapter logo transfer on his banner and what have you. But he's got a combi flamer, and another flamer there. Basically, the theme of this squad is flamers, and my idea with them is that basically you're going to jump out of a drop pod or out of a land raider and just burninate everything in front of them is the idea. So I've taken them virtually, or not quite the maximum amount of flames I could have in this squad, but quite a lot of them. About half with flamers, half with special issue bolt guns. So hopefully, yeah, they'll jump out of whatever their means of transportation are and just, yeah, could jump out of a Storm Raven actually, that'd be a good idea. But yeah, they'll leap out and then just toast everything with those flamers of theirs, which should be quite fun. One of the custom chapter tactics I want to use for these guys is the one that increases the weapons range a little bit. I think it adds 3 inches range to their weapons. I forget what it's called. But it includes flamers. So you can have 11-inch flamers, I think, or something like that. Normally 8 inches, aren't they? So yeah, like 11-inch flamers, which means you could deep strike him with a drop pod and flame on the same turn. Sorry, I really need to get a drink. My throat's gone all croaky for some reason. Ugh. But yeah, that's the idea. Jump out of a drop pod, potentially even in turn 1 if I felt it strategically necessary, and then just toast everything. Ideally, you do it turn 2 though, so that those flamers suddenly become AP -1. So armor piercing flamers. Oh yeah, oh yeah, that would be really nice. So yeah, that's the plan with them. Very nice, very nice. And this guy I painted brand new as well. This is a Chaplain, a Primaris Chaplain, because I didn't have a Primaris Chaplain until now. I had a Chaplain Terminator armor, I had a Chaplain with a jump pack, but I didn't have a Primaris one. And the main reason for that was a Primaris Chaplain was a bit useless towards the start of 8th edition, because it used to be the case that Chaplains were close combat buffers. They would increase the damage output of by allowing rerolls for close combat units. And the problem with the Primaris Chaplain is there was really no particularly convenient way of getting him up close into combat with all of his mates, other than putting him in a massive repulsor. And I don't have a repulsor because I find repulsors a bit repulsive. Unfortunately, I think they're really ugly tanks. I don't like them. I've got one in a box somewhere that I will build one day, but I'm not in any great rush to do so. Give me a Land Raider any day. But nevertheless, since the latest Marine Codex, so they changed Chaplains so that they can be more backfield buffing focused. So less sort of up in people's faces, bashing them and giving rerolls to hit in close combat. They can sit back up on the hill, shouting out litanies and helping units shoot better and stuff if he wants to as well. They're more flexible now. So I felt like that was a good excuse to get a Primaris Chaplain on the table finally, and so here he is. He's converted slightly from the regular one, different head. Doesn't have a skull helmet on him, because I couldn't find one that I liked. A lot of people just use Raver helmets, and I thought, no, I don't want to be like everyone else though, so I'm not going to do that. So I decided to not give him a helmet at all. I thought I'd give him this angry looking head instead, which has got like a bionic bit in it, because he's had half his head blown off at some point, so the rest it's been replaced by metal. And I quite like the look of that head, so I popped that on him, and there he is. Mr. Angry Chaplain Man, ready to lead his brothers into battle, either from the rear or from the front, whatever he happens to feel like. And I gave him a new Crozius as well, because I was very, very unimpressed with the Crozius Arcanum that comes on this guy by default. It's like a tiny skull on the end of the thing. It looks like a pimp cane. I'm just going to say it looks like a pimp cane, the original. So I found this Aquila Eagle thing in a box of old Space Marines and stuck it on the top instead, and I think it's a massive improvement. That actually looks like it could do some damage if you hit someone with it now. So there you are, Chaplain, lovely. Can't wait to use him at some point. I think he should be quite good. He was originally destined for my little Blood Angels army, this guy actually. It was originally... because I have a small... It's a kill team, really. It's not an army. It's a kill team of Blood Angel successors called the Silver Saints. I have them around here somewhere. I might be able to show them to you in a future hobby vlog. But they were going to be an army, and then I built a squad of them and a captain, and I just kind of was like, you know what? That was fun. I enjoyed painting you, but I don't know if I want to go ahead and do an entire army of you. I may return to them at some point, but for now I'm mostly just focusing on the Revenants as my Space Marine army. And this guy originally was going to be for the Silver Saints, but now he's a Revenant instead. And that's fine. So there you go. I have a few models like that. I have a Librarian. Whoops, just knocked the cable that's charging the camera. Apologies for that, because it might have made a boomf sound on the recording. Apologies. Yeah, I've got a few models like that. As a Librarian in my box of not yet finished Space Marines somewhere, who's covered in little bits of Blood Angels iconography, because he was originally supposed to be a Silver Saint and not a Revenant. So yeah, a few bits like that. Now, you never know, I might go back to it at some point. Thing is, we've got all those, in 9th edition, we're getting all these new close combat Space Marines. And on the one, I'm really torn about them, because on the one hand they'll be a perfect fit for the Silver Saints if I decided to make a proper army out of them, because they are Blood Angel successors, so they do like the close combat. On the other hand, though, a lot of them, particularly the Blade Guard veterans, I think they're called, they look so Imperial Fist. They look so Imperial Fistish. They look just like the warders, the Phalanx warders, and the Templar Brethren from 30k that the Imperial Fists get. So I'm sort of torn. They would make good Blood Angels, but they also make really cool looking Imperial Fists. So I can't decide. But regardless, for now, I'm focusing on these guys. So that's the Marines done. Still working on more. I did a Land Raider too. I repainted my Land Raider. I totally forgot about that. I should have put that on the table as well. Oh well, never mind. We'll put that in the next video. Yeah, I repainted my Land Raider. Mostly for these guys to ride in, so... Although they can jump into Storm Raven too. Or a drop pod. I don't have a drop pod yet though. I've got one somewhere tucked away in a box, but it's not painted yet. So that's on the to-do list. I need to find the bloody thing and then paint it, so I don't know when that's going to happen. Next up we have Vostroyans, ladies and gentlemen. Now I mentioned in the previous hobby vlog I did that I was going to do a new guard regiment, and here it is. Now the plan is slightly changed from what it was before. I was going to use some third-party kits to make my guard regiment, but as you can see these are Games Workshop Vostroyans. I managed to get these off eBay, a whole bunch of them. Come on camera, focus, there we go. I managed to get a whole bunch of them off of eBay for a relatively reasonable price. And actually there they are, there's the rest of them in that box there. The guy was nice enough to throw in the carry case for them as well, so that's good. But I went for Vostroyans in the end because they were the closest that I could get to what I wanted for the regiment that was actually still Games Workshop official and would allow me to take them to Warhammer World and stuff like that. So here they are. They're Vostroyan models. They're not going to be Vostroyans, as in narratively they're going to be from a different planet. But visually they have Vostroyan style equipment. So they've got the big bearskin hats and the cool artisan, like homemade wooden las rifles, which I think are gorgeous, and all the lovely extra bits of equipment and stuff on there. I love these models. I'd never seen them in person, in the flesh, before until I got these. I'd only ever seen them in pictures from Games Workshop, and I really didn't appreciate how much amazing detail and stuff is on these models. I mean, they're metal. It was really weird at the time when these guys came out, because even at the time metal models were kind of getting phased out, so it was really weird of Games Workshop to release a new metal army back then. It was around the Medusa 5 campaign, so it was around 5th edition, I think it was. And Games Workshop released these, and everyone was like, okay, look, here's the thing, Games Workshop, they're absolutely gorgeous, but why the hell are they metal in this day and age? And Games Workshop never provided an answer to that, I don't think, as far as I know, but they released them, and then they discontinued them quite quickly afterwards, unfortunately. But I managed to get my hands on these, and I'm very pleased with them, and I'm looking to get my hands on more, and I like them a lot. I think they're gorgeous. They don't take that long to paint either. That's the funny thing. They're such busy looking models, you would think that they would take ages to paint, but they actually don't. All of the Vostroyans you see right here in this camera shot right now, I painted in 3 days. That's all it took, 3 days to do all that. This is Sergeant Humphrey. He's called Sergeant Humphrey because he looks a lot like Humphrey from my Dragon Age series I did on Twitch many years ago. Unfortunately, you can't watch it anymore. Not all of it anyway, because the VODs didn't get saved, but I still have the emote, the Twitch emote for him. But yeah, it's a Sergeant Humphrey with a big orange moustache. Big ginger tash. There he is. He's been immortalised now as a Vostroyan sergeant. Quite like him. I quite like him. It's not Golden Demon standard painting quality here, I must admit. I could do better if I wanted to. But I decided I wanted to prioritise speed over anything else, because this is a guard army at the end of the day, and I'm going to need to paint a lot of them. So I'd like to get it done sometime this year. So therefore, it's yeah. Quality has taken a backseat to quantity on this one. That said, I put a little bit more effort in on this guy because it's one of the commanders. I think this gentleman might be the major. I think this guy will go on to be the second in command of the regiment, the major, because he's quite regal looking, isn't he? He looks important, doesn't he, with his metal leg and his power fist and his big pointy stick and his big bearskin and his even bigger moustache. yeah, he looks very cool. So I think this guy's going to be the Major somebody. I don't know what his name is yet though. Got a little medic here as part of his command squad. Do like that model, very nice. I love the Vox casters actually that the Vostroyans get. Slightly more low tech looking. But I like all the chainmail stuff. They're really weird and interesting, the Vostroyans, because they, at a glance, they look sort of vaguely Napoleonic, but when you look closer, you realise they're actually not. They're more sort of, they're mixes of stuff all over the place. They're like a little bit Napoleonic, but they're also a little bit 17th century. And they're also a little bit Middle Ages, because they wear chainmail and stuff, you know. And I can see that. I can sort of dig that as well, because, you know, these guys go to war against a lot of enemies who actually close to fight in melee combat rather than shooting back. So I can imagine a guard regiment like this essentially lining their coats and uniforms with chainmail to counter that, basically. If it's like you've got a bunch of Tyranids coming at you with sharp claws and stuff like that, you sew chainmail into your coats and you wear chainmail vests and stuff to sort of counter that a bit. Sort of very, very low tech, but it works. And I like the combination of stuff. Like he's got this high tech rifle, but it's also made of wood, like an old school rifle. And he's wearing this medieval chain coif, but he's also wearing a Voxcaster like radio thing with a microphone on it and stuff like that. It's just weird, anachronistic madness, and I love it. I think the original like Vostroyan illustration, which these guys are all inspired from, was by John Blanche, if I recall, which would explain how mad they are. Because John Blanche did some very, very crazy illustrations. And this guy is probably going to be a captain or a lieutenant, this guy. Just sort of like junior officer type sort of fella, platoon commander if you like, with his power sword and his plasma pistol. But he's very cool. And yeah, the gas masks as well, just to sort of throw it all into flux too. A sort of very World War I style almost. I think these guys are wonderful. I think they're great. Absolutely love them. I want to get more, and I want to paint more. I have lots more in there. I need more basic infantry, though, is the main thing, actually, because in that box I have, right now, more las cannon and heavy bolter teams than I could realistically need, which is a bit odd. And I have way more snipers than I need as well. I have like 10 snipers in there, which is crazy. Regular Imperial Guard snipers aren't very good either, so that's kind of annoying and useless. I'm thinking of converting some of them slightly to make them into like melter gunners or something like that, but yeah, slightly more snipers than I realistically need. I could just run them as ratlings, but that wouldn't feel right, because the whole thing with ratlings is they're small. That's why their rules exist, because they're small tiny hobbits. If I play dudes who are obviously not tiny hobbits as tiny hobbits, it would feel a bit wrong to me. So, you know. But anyway, the Vostroyan's coming along quite nicely, as you can see. I'm working on a standard bearer right now, because he's the only one of them I have primed, because the weather is shite outside at the moment. It's raining, and I can't get anything sprayed. I can't prime any new stuff. So the only thing I'm working on right now is a standard bearer to go in the command squad. But that's what I've got so far. I'm working on these guys quite quick at the moment, because one, I'm very passionate about them at the moment. This is where my hobby muse has led me at the moment. My hobby muse is a free spirit. It is charging all over the place like a bull in a china shop from one army to another, and I just sort of grab on and hold on for dear life. And as a result, I end up painting all sorts of stuff. Because when I don't have a deadline for a battle report or a game or a tournament or something I need to go to, this is what happens. I end up painting like 6 different things at once, because I don't have a deadline to work to. But for now, this is where the hobby passion is with these Vostroyans. So I'm going to keep at it until I end up inevitably moving on to something else. And I think I know what the next thing might be as well, but we'll get into that later. There's other Vostroyan bits here as well, though. So here's the thing, because the reason I didn't end up going with my third-party plan yet is because the kits that I needed to do the third-party Guard Infantry model idea didn't arrive for bloody ages. They have finally. Here they are. These things. Deathfield Les Grognards from Wargames Atlantic. This took like over a month to get here. And I was beginning to think it wasn't going to get here at all. But here they are. And they have arrived now. And I think what I'm going to do with these guys now is what my original plan roughly was. Which is I'm going to put peaked caps on them from Anvil, that I've got a bag full of. and give them some Cadian-style lasguns instead of these weird-looking things. And I will run them as conscripts, because with this new army that I'm doing, this new Guard regiment that I'm doing, I want to focus on units that my Cadians don't have much of. So I will have lots of transports, because my Cadians don't really do transports. They don't really do conscripts, and they don't really do scions/stormtroopers very much. So, and they don't have much artillery either. They have like one basilisk, and that's it for artillery. They're mostly just infantry squads and tanks are my Cadians. So I want to focus on all the other stuff with my Vostroyans. So sentinels, artillery, some of the Forge World tanks, like the big crazy flamer tank I'd like to get my hands on, for example. All that sort of stuff. So I want it to be, it's the same army, it's still Imperial Guard, but it will be a very different army to the Cadians. So it won't be replacing the Cadians, it will just be a totally different style of Imperial Guard army, is the idea. That's what I'm thinking, anyway. So conscripts will be a thing, and this comes with enough bits in to make 20 guys, which makes a conscript squad, funnily enough, because a conscript squad is 20 guys. Conscripts are a bit rubbish in 8th edition currently. They're kind of useless and pointless and whatever, but I'm hoping maybe in 9th edition they become a bit more useful. So when they do, I will be ready for it, because I will have a bunch of conscripts. And as I said, I'm going to do the thing I said, where I put the peak caps on them. So they look a bit like Prussian Landwehr from the Napoleonic era. And that is appropriate, ultimately, because the Prussian Landwehr in the Napoleonic era were, I think, a militia conscript unit. That's what they were. They were conscripts. So it's actually quite appropriate. So that's the thing. That's the thing. I got these guys over here as well. These dudes. Now these are the Kill Team Rogue Trader Eleusidian Starstriders, I think they're called. Focus camera, please. And these guys, I've given them new heads, as you can see. I've given them heads from this kit. These Napoleonic French Grenadier heads with the big bear skins. And these guys, I'm thinking are going to be my veterans. I want to clearly delineate my regular squads from my veteran squads, so that an opponent can look at them and be like, right, those are clearly veterans. Because I don't like it when I'm sort of like, I have these 3 identical squads here, 2 of them are infantry squads, 1 of them is veterans. Can you tell the difference, dear opponent? No? Good. I don't think that's very fair. I think that's a bit cheeky when people do that. So I want my veterans to look noticeably different from the regular troops. They're also noticeably taller than the regular troops, as you can see, which is was actually true of actual Napoleonic Grenadiers, if I recall. They were actually taller than regular troops, because they recruited the tall people to become Grenadiers, I think. I don't know if I'm just making that up or if it's an urban myth or something, but I think that was the case. And I think that's what is going to be the case in the narrative of this army. The big, chunky guys who've eaten all their vegetables and are very tall, they get recruited into the Grenadiers and are given additional equipment and training, and that's why I'm going to run them as veterans. So at the minute I have just these proof of concept models here, which is this guy, and these 2, which I've stuck on a base together, and I'm going to run them as a heavy bolter squad with that rotor cannon. It's going to just count as a heavy bolter, I guess, because I can't think of anything better to do with it. Unfortunately, the problem is there's only, like, in the Rogue Trader kit, and I can get plenty of extra ones off eBay, but in the Rogue Trader kit, you only get, like, 4 Starstriders, including the rotor cannon guy. You only get 4 of these guys in relatively fixed mono poses. So I might have to, in order to avoid a bunch of absolute clones, and there'll be a few in this army, because ultimately the bulk of it's going to be metal Vostroyans, and they are monopose, and they do look similar. So that's just going to be a thing in this army. I'm going to have to deal with that. I can't have every single guy look completely unique. It's just not going to work. But I may have to, with these guys, these veterans, I might have to maybe use the Tempestus Scions kit as well to add a little bit of variety, perhaps. Maybe kit bash it with a couple of other bits or something, but I think the same 4 models repeated across like 2 or 3 squads will look a bit weird. So I might have to use, in addition to these, some Tempestus Scions, possibly to make my veteran squads. Which then begs the question, if I'm using Tempestus Scions to make the veterans, what am I using to make the actual Scions / stormtroopers? I don't like calling them Scions. I prefer to call them stormtroopers because that's more old school. That's the Imperial Guard I remember. They had Kazakin and stormtroopers. Scions did not come into the equation. That was nonsense. Didn't exist. But anyway, The answer to that question is these guys. These are Solar Auxilia, I think it's the Solar Auxilia Las Rifle section from Forge World, from 30k, from the Horus Heresy. That's what these guys are. They are the Solar Auxilia. And they are these dudes in fairly chunky looking armour with some fancy looking las guns. And these guys are going to be my stormtroopers. I've already decided that they're going to be called the Ironsides. We're not going to call them Scions. We're going to call them Ironsides. And there'll be units of these attached to most regiments from this planet that I'm inventing. And these are the guys that walk into battle in this sort of slightly more heavy armour, with these slightly better crafted las guns, which will be hot shot las guns, obviously. And yeah, these are going to be the Ironsides, and they're going to be my stormtroopers, effectively. Because I think these models are really cool. Love the Solar Auxilia range. I think they're really cool. If I got into Horus Heresy, I would want to play Solar Auxilia because they're just really cool. But yeah, these are going to be my Kansas Scions, effectively. I'm going to need to find a way of kit bashing some special weapons in here, like plasma guns and flames and things, and volley guns. I don't know how I'm going to tackle that just yet, but I will find a way, I'm sure. But these guys are going to be the stormtroopers. That's their whole thing. They're going to be the stormtroopers. They have eschewed the big bearskin hats and the big coats for some seriously chunky armour. But they still have that sort of anachronistic feel to them. Like, they still have sort of like old school wooden las rifles, if you see what I mean. There's something slightly almost steampunkish about them, which is what sells me on them as being a worthy addition to an army of Vostroyans. I think it works, personally. I think I'll be a lot more convinced when they're actually painted up in the same colours. But yeah. Oh, and we have this. So this army, as I said, is going to feature a lot more artillery. Starting with this Griffin Bombard. It's heavy, because part of it's made of metal. Not including the crew, which is also metal, which I put on here. I brought this off a friend who didn't want it anymore, which is why part of it is already painted. I'm going to try and just spray over this with lead belcher, and hopefully it will be okay, because I don't have enough stuff or a big enough container to strip an entire tank like this with the paint all off. I don't know how I would strip all the paint off this, basically, if I had to. So I'm going to just spray lead belcher over it and hope for the best. And then once I've done that, I'll have a look at it and see if I really do need to strip it or not. And if I do, then I'll figure out a way. But if not, hopefully I won't need to. So, but here it is. It's a Griffin Bombard. I don't think these are made anymore, but I do believe rules still exist for them from Forge World. So obviously, as you can see, it's a mortar. It's a big, fat, gigantic mortar on the back of a Chimera chassis here. And a heavy bolter in the front there. And I put a couple of these. They're not glued in yet, these guys, so I can paint them a bit easier. But a couple of Vostroyan weapons crew in the back there as well, to help it look the part a bit more. I also put some sandbags along here as well, because they looked a bit exposed. The poor crew looked a little bit exposed, just sat there with nothing here. It looked like there ought to have been a shield or something, but there isn't one. I mean, you know, like how basilisks have that big gun shield on them, right? I mean, hold on. You know how basilisks have this big gun shield thing on them, right? Well, it kind of looked like it was missing something like that. You know what I mean? You're shooting it there, you could quite easily kill the crew if you were just armed with a little las gun, some little traitor guardsman, or a grot with a grot blaster. You could easily shoot the crew off that, and it would not be good. So I think by adding the sandbags, they've got just at least a little bit more protection from incoming fire. Is the thought there? They look a bit. It's just made out of green stuff. It's surprisingly easy to make sandbags out of green stuff. You just roll a bunch of green stuff up into a little sausage, and then you get a hobby knife out, and then you just cut it into sections, and it automatically kind of makes these sandbag shapes. It's wonderful. Still looks a bit weird right now, but I assure you, once it's painted, I think it will look the business. So I also had to loot a hatch from a Chimera kit I had lying around because it was missing on this thing. The hatch was missing, and it had this whole weird like toe thing glued wonkily on the side at a funny angle, because I don't know, the guy who built this originally must have been drunk. I don't know what that was about, but I managed to pull that off, which is why there's a load of exposed plastic here. But yeah, so that's the Griffin Bombard. I'll be doing that one of these upcoming days. Hopefully it'll turn out alright. And then after that, we're buying a shed load of these things. And some manticores and maybe a death strike. I want this army to have lots of artillery support. Because the Cadians, all they have is this. They have this one basilisk, Big Bertha. Which is nice, but that's just one. The rest of their army is like Lehman Russ tanks and infantry squads. So I want the Vostroyans to have tons of artillery. Lots of infantry squads, because it's a guard army and you can't not have lots of infantry squads. But also lots of artillery. And maybe a couple of super heavy tanks as well. I'm thinking I'd really like to get a shadow sword. I've been wanting a shadow sword for ages, the Titan killing tank, and I haven't got one yet. But I think I might now. I think he might be belonging to these guys. So that could be quite fun. That's all I have to say about this lot. Yeah, Vostroyans, except they're technically not Vostroyans, but you know what I mean. This is what they look like so far. Progress is being made quite fast. I'm very pleased with them. Oh yeah, I was thinking of, I think I mentioned previously, I was thinking of doing that platoon forward thing. There is a set of wargaming solo rules for playing solo games of various war games called Platoon Forward. I was thinking of filming some solo bat reps using the system. And I've been writing down in a notebook like the various bits of the system that I could adapt for 40k. And it mostly would work best for an Imperial Guard based thing. So that's how I'm probably going to do it if I decide to do it in the end. But if I do it, I'd like to do it with these guys. I think it would be a really fun way to introduce the new regiment to the channel would be via a platoon forward campaign during lockdown. Of course, the rate things are going, the lockdown might actually be over by the time I actually get around to filming anything like that, which would be quite funny, but assuming that's not the case, I think it would be quite fun to do a little platoon forward campaign with these guys to introduce them to the channel, because you don't need a lot of them for games of platoon forward. It's very low model count, almost skirmish-like. So if I had one platoon of these guys painted up, which I'm very close to having right now, that would do. Because all of the supporting units that come in certain missions, they could be Cadians or Space Marines or something like that, you know. The NPCs, as the game system calls them. These are the player characters, effectively, and everything else is NPCs, because there's a whole character system and a story system and events and stuff. Because the idea of Platoon Forward is to make it interesting by making it so that the player has no idea what to expect when playing the game. There's lots and lots of random elements to it to try and make it interesting. Because normally, otherwise, playing against yourself is like playing chess against yourself, you know. It's you're never surprised by anything because you already know what you're going to do against yourself. But the core idea of Platoon Forward is to remove that sense of certainty by introducing a load of weird, random, fun shit to the game. Is the general idea. So if I do it, if I do decide to, because it would be a bit of work to do, but if I do decide to do it, I'd like to do it with these guys because I think it'd be a really fun way to introduce them to the channel. I think that could be quite fun. But anyway, there you go. There's the Vostroyans, but not Vostroyans. What's next? Sisters of Battle. Here they all are. In this foam tray. This isn't a proper showcase of them, but here they are. You'll notice their basing scheme. I hate these stupid flying stands so much. But you'll notice their basing scheme is really similar to the Vostroyans. Because I'd actually really quite like to run the Sisters alongside the Vostroyans in a few battles. I think that would be really nice. I think that'd be quite fun and cool and stuff. So, but yes, I painted a Canoness recently. Here's the most recent thing I did for this lot. This Canoness, she's okay. As you can see, I've kitbashed her a bit so she doesn't look identical to all the other Canonesses from the army set that they released. But not my best paint job ever. Mostly I had issues with it because the head I used for her doesn't have a lot of detail to work with on it. So she looks a bit like a mannequin, if I'm honest. I'm not amazingly happy with her, but she's not going to be the only Canoness I have. So, whatever. But good enough for government work is what I figured when I'd sat painting this thing for 2 days. I just decided, right, you know what, that'll just have to do for now. So I got her done. I've got about 50 or 60 Battle Sisters and some Seraphim, and that's about it so far. It's been slow progress on these guys because I wasn't able to get any new boxes of them during the lockdown. But, and they're pretty low priority in general anyway, because because Dan, aka Red Tooth, has his wife's sister's army, which he uses on the channel quite a lot. So I'm not in a massive rush to get my own sister's army sorted as a result of that. But they're slowly cooking over in the background. I'm slowly getting more of them done, because they are very, very cool. They are very, very nice. Both the old models I haven't mixed in here with the new ones. I'm very pleased with them, but yeah. There you go. Sister Battle. Still working on them. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that I haven't tidied away all of the Chaos stuff yet. I've still got the Long Night, the Death Guard out on the table, and I've still got my Black Legion out on the table. And there is reasons for that. Yes, indeed. Because one of these two, if not both, might be one of the next things I decide to work on after I've got enough of the Vostroyans done that I'm happy with them. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is the Long Night I've suddenly become a bit more interested in, because GW has been previewing the new Death Guard stuff from their Psychic Awakening book, and there was one specific thing that they previewed that made me go, ooh, and that was a stratagem that one of the Death Guard warbands gets access to, which allows you to deep strike Poxwalkers, the zombie guys, to represent them basically raising from the dead and climbing out of the ground. And I looked at that and I thought, and I just imagined, like, because these guys are sort of like they're basically themed around the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. I just remembered that scene from Hardhome, where the Night King's up on the waterfront and he's just raising his arms in the air and all the dead people are getting back up to life. And I thought, oh my god, it's exactly like that. And that suddenly made me go, ooh, maybe I should make this into an army just so I can do that. Just so my Lord of Contagion can stand there and raise skeletons and zombies from the dead on the battlefield in the game, because that would be so cool. And yeah, so that got me thinking, maybe I should come back to these guys, because I have the stuff to make these guys into an army if I want to. A couple of Christmases ago, they were doing a Death Guard Battle Force set, which had a bunch of Plague Marines and Bloat Drones and Terminators and stuff in it, and I bought 2 of them. I bought 2 of the bloody things, because I was fooled into thinking I was saving myself money. It's the GW's little scam they like to pull on you. You're totally saving money if you buy these really expensive boxes, because they work out slightly cheaper than if you bought everything separately. So therefore, clearly you are saving money and not giving us like 200 quid. But regardless, I bought 2 boxes of things and then haven't really done anything with them since, but I've had them in the cupboard for ages, and so I could very easily expand these guys into a proper army. Not a very big army, but a decent sized army of Death Guard. And I've got enough fantasy skeletons and zombies tucked away to make Poxwalkers out of, so it could be done. It could be done. And the addictive thing about these guys is they're very easy and quick to paint. Because really all it is tons of dry brushing. Really, it's tons of dry brushing, and then you paint the icy bits white, or with Grey Sear, I think it's called, one of the contrast-based paints. And then you just use I use a mixture of Kellyan green contrast paint and Gilliman blue, I think it's called, the blue glaze, to make it look all icy, and that was kind of it, really. There wasn't a lot to it. Oh yeah, and the little sort of necrotic, purple, rotting flesh nurgling on the side there, which I quite like the look of. It's a nice alternative to just green nurglings all the time, I think. I was quite pleased with that. But anyway. So that's a thing. That's a thing. That one, you see, it's funny how that works. That one little rule, that one little stratagem that they previewed suddenly made me go, ooh, that's interesting. I could build an army around that. That's often the way it goes. It's not because I think, ooh, that would be really competitive and really good if I could deep strike Poxwalkers. That'd be super OP and I could crush my opponents and see them driven before me and hear the lamentation of their women. No, it's just because narratively it would be really cool to just raise the dead on the battlefield in a game and have zombies crawling out of the ground, ice zombies at that. It would be so good. Like I said, it'd be just like in that episode of Game of Thrones, where all the dead people get back up Spoilers, I guess, but whatever. Sorry. But yeah, that would be really cool. So that's why they're still on the table, because I'm sort of eyeballing them and thinking, do I want to do more of you? Do I? And then the other guys out on the table are my Black Legion. When I was doing the Chaos Codex? When I was doing the Chaos Showcase, I got very nostalgic about Black Legion, because they were my first Chaos army that I collected. The old Black Legion. I got very, very nostalgic about them, looking at the models and talking about them in the video. And I read Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Talon of Horus novel a while ago, last year. And recently, I've also started reading Black Legion, which is the second novel in that series. And long story short, the Black Legion are so cool in those books. I challenge you to read the Black Legion novels and not at least consider starting a Black Legion army afterwards, because they are just they're just brilliant books, and also, I suppose, a brilliant piece of Games Workshop marketing, I guess. They probably owe Aaron Dembski-Bowden big time for that, because I think he's sold a lot of Black Legion armies with his books. Because you see, I've got this whole big pile of Chaos stuff. All these, look. Bikes. Quite a few bikes. Kit bashed. It's the old bikes, but kit bashed with some of the new Chaos Marine bits. As you can see, new helmet, new chainsword, shoulder pads, backpack, etc. Look quite nice. Maybe not as nice as the new Primera Space Marine bikes, although they're quite controversial as it's turned out. People are not universally fans of those. I think they're kind of cool, but whatever. Anyway, Chaos Bikers, as you can see, I got, that's Lachesis. He whatever. We'll get to him at some point. I've got Havocs. Although, are you a Havoc or are you just a Chaos Marine that I gave a last cannon to? I'm not really sure. I've got some Havocs in here somewhere, I'm sure of it. But I've also got some regular... I've got some Possessed. The new Chaos Marine kits, but the lighting's not very good here. Hold on. That's better. I kit bashed some of the new Chaos Marine kits with some of the old Possessed stuff to make slightly bigger, chunkier looking Possessed. And then Alfarius went and made his Possessed out of an Intercessor kit and some Genestealer cult bits, and that looks even better, and I'm now jealous, but hey. I love these new Chaos Marine kits. They even look really nice paired with some of the old bits, like these Possessed parts. But I really love these, because I remember reading my 3.5 edition Chaos Codex when I got my Black Legion back in the day, and looking at all the gorgeous illustrations in there and thinking, these illustrations as Chaos Marines are absolutely sick, they look so cool. But the plastic models of the Chaos Marines look shite. Even back then, in 3rd edition, I did feel that the Chaos Marines, the old ones, did look a bit poor. They really didn't match up to the artwork at all. But these new ones do. They look like they've leaped straight off the pages of those old codexes. And I love them. They're so freaking good. I was halfway between freaking and flipping there, and I couldn't make up my mind. Fleeking good, that's what they are. But there's a Possessed guy. There's more of them in there. I got these guys too. These dudes with cloaks. They were going to be chosen. Word bearers chosen, obviously, because they've got these maces. But I could clip those off and do them to turn them into something else quite easily. It would be a thing. But, see, I've got a bunch of Chaos stuff in here that's not painted. It is assembled, but it's not painted. There you go, Top Knot Marine. Classic Chaos. Right there. The Top Knot. I think a Mark III arm, a chainsword and arm in there as well. A few little kit bashes here and there. Yeah, same with the gun arm. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of this Chaos stuff, and the idea, obviously, was to make these word bearers. But, here's the but. I'm thinking about getting back into the Black Legion again. I'm really, really considering it. And because I've got this big pile of stuff that would fit very nicely into a Black Legion army, it's awfully tempting. It's awfully, awfully tempting. See, look at him. He's got the top knot and everything. He would look so good in black and gold. He really would. He would look gorgeous in black and gold. And, you know, bikers... Like, I'm sure the word bearers have some bikers, but they don't feel like a very word bearer-y sort of thing to me, honestly, bikers. They do feel very Black Legion, though. You know what I mean? Possessed are a bit more word-bearery, obviously, but you know, the Black Legion have tons of possessed too. That's just a fact. In the narrative, they have tons of possessed as well. So that's not a thing. That's no big deal. I like this guy because he looks a bit more like the classic Chaos Marine with the big horns on the helmet. But yeah, you know, I've got all these guys, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, they'd be... Now, this one's definitely a Havoc. He's got the clawed feet. But these guys would make really cool Black Legionnaires. They really would. And the thing is, I could tie it into the narrative of my Wordbearers a little bit. Because my Wordbearers, they hate the Black Legion. And I'm sure the feeling is mutual. My Wordbearers, and you notice it in the short story I did for them, they hate the Black Legion. They just about tolerate their presence because they have to work with them for the greater evil of the Black Crusade. And, you know, destroying the false emperor, etc. But they really hate the Black Legion. They think they're a bunch of oath-breaking, cowardly brigands and barbarians, and they don't really like the Black Legion at all. They would love to just wipe them off the face of the galaxy if they had the chance. And I'm sure the Black Legion in turn thinks that the Wordbearers are a bunch of Bible-bashing, bitter old men who can't let go of the past and embrace the future. So, but it would be quite fun to tie them together a bit by having the leader of a Black Legion warband be someone who was once a Wordbearer. But he basically said, look, here's the thing. Lorgar has been sat on Sikaris for 10,000 years doing absolutely F-all. Abaddon is the only guy around here who's getting anything done. I'm going, I am taking my warband with me, and I am joining the Black Legion. I'm going to take the Black, and I'm going to go embrace the future. And, yeah, I think that'd be kind of interesting. If he knew Tal Ezra and Korvarik and all the rest of them previously, but nowadays is in the Black Legion, that would be kind of interesting to me. I'm aware of the fact that I have basically invented a cinematic universe for my fucking toy soldiers, but just to be clear, there's an element of self-awareness to this nonsense, but I think it would be fun. And the thing is, again, it's like with the Vostroyans, I'd like to make the army very different to the Wordbearers as well. Like, nowhere near as many demon engines and stuff like that. My Wordbearers are all full of demon engines and summoning demons and stuff. I think I would do that far less with the Black Legion. I would have more traditional stuff in there, like tanks. You know, land raiders and rhinos and predators and stuff like that, potentially. And that's probably good news, because I think tanks are apparently going to be a bit better off in the upcoming edition than they were previously. They, for example, I think they're going to be able to move and fire their heavy weapons without penalty now, which is awesome. That will actually make predators useful. So that could be good. So a bit more tank-based than demon engine-based would be nice. But I'd like to make them a really old-school Chaos Black Legion army, by which I mean I'd like to have all four gods represented in the form of cult troops. So I'd like to have the Black Legion Berserker squads, and Black Legion Plague Marines, and Black Legion Rubrics, and Black Legion Noise Marines, all in the same army, fighting under the same banner, old-school style. Do you know, I would even be tempted to paint the base rims goblin green. I know, shocking, but I would be tempted to do it if I could get away with it without it looking horrific. Because part of this as well is I finally dug up, I couldn't find it for the previous video when I was doing my Chaos Showcase, but in between that and this, I dug up my 3.5 Chaos Codex. In fact, I'll show it to you. Oh yeah, here it is. I liked showing off the Codex Eye of Terror in the previous video, so I thought I'd do it again with this. This is the legendary 3.5 edition Chaos Codex. And there's the Black Legion in all its glory. And look, goblin green base rims. The main base itself is like grey and, you know, like generic battlefield dirt, but the rims are still goblin green. And I like it. But look, see, they've got the Khorne Berserkers with the black armour and red helmets. They've got Furies. Whatever the hell happened to Furies, eh? They've got Noise Marines. They've got Noise Marines up there. They've got Plague Marines. They got Rubrics. Some Thousand Sun guys there. I've got a low battery warning. Bugger off so I can keep filming, please. It blurs out the entire screen and comes up with a pop-up in the middle of the screen so you can't see what on earth you were filming. It's so annoying. Anyway, anyone who's got an iPhone will know what I'm talking about. But yeah, look at them. It would also be a really nice excuse for me to get some more of the brand new Terminators that are really sweet. Because it's hard to justify getting more Terminators for the Word Bearers when they already have like 20 of the buggers. But if I was starting a Black Legion army, I could get more Terminators. Because I really like Terminators. Especially Chaos ones. Jesus, look at that one. Yeah, I forgot you could put like the saw blades and stuff on the front of the rhinos back in this. Oh man. The memories are coming back. I totally forgot that was a thing. Look at that. Old school Dreadnought as well. That's a cool little model. I missed those guys. But yeah, Black Legion. Why? They're even on the cover. Look at that. There was this weird period between like 5th edition and 7th edition where like the Crimson Slaughter, they were called, became the poster boys of Chaos. Those Red Chaos Marines, the Renegade chapter, for some reason. But nowadays they've gone back to the Black Legion being the poster boys, as it should be, if you ask me. I say that even as a Word Bearers fan, you know, like the Black Legion are the baddies. They are the big bad. They aren't the, you know, the Word Bearers are the origin of the bad. You know, they are the naughty Emperor Palpatine. But the Black Legion are Darth Vader at the end of the day. You know, they are the big baddies that we actually care about. But look at all this stuff in here. Now, I've actually had a little read through this codex after digging it up again. And it's interesting because this was, as I said before, this is lauded as being like the best Chaos Codex ever. I love this bit of artwork here. This guy just looks like he's stepped in some dog poo. It's like, what is that on the floor? Oh my god, it's all over my boots! Like, everyone else is fighting and doing battle stuff, and he's just staring down at something like, what? But anyway, it's a wonderful codex, it really is. Like, the narrative, the lore in it is just brilliant, beautiful. But also the, oh man, look at that picture of that Obliterator. I wish the Obliterator models looked that cool back in the day, but they kind of didn't. But you see what I mean, like the difference in terms of the gorgeous illustration. Like, look at these guys here. Look at these fellas. Look at him compared to these derpy little fellas. You know, you see what I mean? You see what I mean? Like, there was a bit of a discrepancy there, which I feel has now been addressed with the new Chaos models. That's a big old Plague Marine right there. The Book of Nurgle. I love it. That's what they call the different sections of it. The Book of Nurgle. They had all the Nurgly rules in here. Great stuff. Although I have to say, as good as a codex it is, I have to admit there is a lot... God, I love that picture of the Berserker in the Book of Cornbit. That's such a good picture. There's a colour version of that floating around, and it is beautiful. Love it. Anyway, the one thing I have found about this is that compared to 8th edition Chaos... I have many issues with 8th edition Chaos. They annoy me on a number of levels, but I won't go into that because I don't want to be negative. But the one thing I have found about this book is even though it gives you lots of really cool options, it is also very restrictive. It is very, very prescriptive in terms of like what units you are allowed and are not allowed to have if your warlord is devoted to XYZ god. Or your warlord belongs to XYZ Legion, you may have these units, but you may also not have all of these units, and it's very... I feel like it's almost not very in the spirit of Chaos to actually wall things off and tell you you're not allowed stuff, and to regulate it so heavily, because Chaos is Chaos, you know? The whole point of these guys is that virtually anything goes. You know, they're not regular. They're not loyalist Space Marines who have companies and the Codex Astartes to adhere to. You know, these guys can get away with virtually everything. You can do all sorts of weird, crazy warbands, and especially in 8th edition. It's one of the good things about 8th edition. But yeah, I would love to see a lot of the flavour in here come back. Like this Armoury of Tzeentch, the Bedlam Staff, Blasted Standard, Slow and Purposeful. Vehicles of Tzeentch, Coruscating Flame. Where's that bit with the rhinos? The Berserker rhinos that can have saw blades on the front. Where is it? There's Khan the Betrayer. Vehicles of Destroyer, here you go. The vehicles equipped with all manner of spikes, slicing blades, scythed wheels, grabbing claws, and torture implements. If given to a Dreadnought, it may reroll one close combat miss in each round of close combat. Blah, 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 blah. If given to a tank, then during Tank Shock... Oh, I wish Tank Shock was still a thing. Tank Shock was wonderful. Instead of hiding from infantry, tanks could go charging into them and try and run them over. And infantry would run away scared, because that's what you would do if a giant tank was charging at you, wouldn't you? Let's be honest. But anyway, I digress. During tank shock, each enemy forced to move takes a wound and a 4+, because they're caught by the big spinny blades of death. See, this stuff I wish we had. I wish we had this stuff, and stratagems and all that crap that you get these days in the supplements. Yeah, they're not a very good substitute in my mind for this fun stuff. I would much rather pay 25 points and stick some giant saw blades on the front of my Berserker's Rhino. That would be way more cool than, just pay 2 CP to make my Berserkers have +1 to wound or something. That's boring. Boring. Want giant spinny blades of death. That's what I want. I want that stuff. I want that stuff. But what I don't necessarily care for quite so much is if I have any Khorne units in my army, therefore I'm not allowed to have anything Slaanesh related at all. Like, the mere presence of some Berserkers means that I cannot have any Noise Marines or a character that's Slaanesh or anything in the army. And some people would be like, oh, that makes sense, that's fine, Khorne and Slaanesh hate each other. But I feel there's room for overlap. Like, you read the Black Legion novels I mentioned, and you have a Tzeentch sorcerer and a World Eater Berserker who are the closest thing Chaos gets to best friends. Because in spite of serving different gods, they actually get on quite well together. They have a slightly antagonistic relationship, but ultimately it works for them. And I like the fact that Chaos is, not quite as it seems in that respect. And this book doesn't really allow a lot of that. It likes to jump out there and say, nope, you're not allowed to do that. As if you're a loyalist or something, where you actually have rules, because sod that. For a game of soldiers, if you ask me, hey? But aside from those little restrictions, it's still a wonderful book, and I would love to see a lot of the flavour in this book make a return. Here's hoping for Chaos Codex 9th edition. Hey, that would be nice. Oh, that's the other thing. That was one of the other things. Like, Wordbearers in 8th edition, they have terrible rules, and in this book they have awesome rules. They're really good. I can't remember which section they're in here, but oh, there they were. Wordbearers. Oh, there's Fabius Bile. That's topical, because he's getting a thing in a new book, I think. Here's a fun thing. Back in the day, Wordbearers were the only legion... they could take demons. They may use any type of demon. They're allowed to have demons in their army without it messing up their rules or anything like that. So that was a nice thing. I'd love to see that come back. But also, they were the only legion... It's in here somewhere, but they were the only legion that could have chaplains. A.k.a. Dark Apostles, which everyone gets nowadays. But back in the day, only Wordbearers were allowed Dark Apostles with an Accursed Crozius and Demagogue as their ability. They were the only guys who could have it. It was part of what made them unique and fun. The fact that they had Chaos Priests running around doing demagoguery stuff. And likewise, Alpha Legion, wherever they are in here, they were the only guys who could... I don't know where they bloody are. They're in here somewhere. They were the only guys who could have cultists. Because that was the Alpha Legion's thing. They would create sneaky cult uprisings on planets behind enemy lines, and therefore they had a lot of cultists in their army. So that was a thing. And they could only take demonic units and demons and stuff if they had enough cultists in their army, because generally the Alpha Legion wouldn't muck about with the demony chaosy stuff, but the cultists in their service would. So you had to have a certain number of cultists in your army, and if you did, then you could take demons to go with the cultists, if you see what I mean. So there were whole layers to it and stuff. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. But yeah, there's the old Chaos Marines Codex. But as I said, it's got me very nostalgic for my old Black Legion with their Goblin Green bases. But I think it'd be really fun to do a Chaos Black Legion army that has all the cult troops in it as elites, like the Berserkers and Noise Marines and Plague Marines, etc. Really old school like that, with tanks. Less crazy demon engines, more tanks. Some dreadnoughts, I think it'd be really interesting and really cool. I will have a really serious hard think about it. Obviously your feedback in the comments would be nice, but ultimately this is my hobby and I do it for me, rather than for anyone else. Because some of you might understandably say, well, really, shouldn't you focus on something else instead of more chaos? Because you already have plenty of chaos. You have a Wordbearer's army. Why don't you get something else on the channel? And my answer to that is, it's my hobby at the end of the day. This is what I do for fun in my free time. And the fact that I record it for YouTube occasionally is more just a thing that I like to share with people as part of my hobby, rather than something I'm trying to do professionally. Because I'm not under no illusions. I'm not tabletop tactics. I'm not the deployment zone. I'm not mini wargaming. I'm not trying to do Warhammer for a living. I don't want to do Warhammer for a living, really. It's far too much work, if I'm honest. It's far too much work. And as the pandemic has shown, it's not as secure a job as you might think it was. I'm happy with my life the way it is, and I want to do my hobby as a hobby and not ruin it by trying to turn it into a job. So that's why I want to do Black Legion instead of a different army, for example. More books. While I'm rambling on about the Chaos Codex, why don't we ramble on about some other books as well that I dug out? This is the 4th edition Space Marines Codex. I've had this for a long time. This is, in my opinion, I don't want to come across as being all like, oh, back in my day, everything was much better than it is now. We had better doctrines and rules and things, as was the style at the time. No, I don't want to be like that. But regardless, because I do like 8th edition on the whole, and I'm really looking forward to 9th edition, because 9th edition has addressed like 99% of all my quibbles with 8th edition. It's looking really good, and I'm really looking forward to it. But nevertheless, this 4th edition Space Marines Codex, written by Graham McNeill, no less, famous Black Library author and author of the Ultramarines novels. This 4th edition Space Marines Codex is, I think, the best Space Marines Codex Games Workshop ever did. I think it is the best one, and I shall tell you for why. Oh yeah, right. Here's the funny thing, right? This is how times have changed. Have a look at this. These are community showcases, models painted by the community in the back of an official codex. You don't see that anymore, do you? They're not quite as fancy as a lot of the community models you see painted these days, but bearing in mind this was the days before everyone had access to things like null oil and internet tutorial videos. So, by the standards of 4th edition, these were gorgeous models. They were much prettier than anything I was painting back then, I can tell you that for nothing. Look at that, that's Blood Raven's captain, that is old Gabriel Angelos from Dawn of War. Because Dawn of War came out roughly around the time of 4th edition. So there's a lot of Blood Raven stuff in here. They even have their own chapter tactics in this book. That's part of the reason I like this book, because I think the Blood Ravens are cool. I have a whole conspiracy theory, by the way, about the Blood Ravens actually secretly being word bearers and not Thousand Sons, as conventional wisdom goes. And I have a bunch of evidence to prove it too, but I'm not going to get into it because otherwise this video will end up being twice as long. Maybe we'll save that one for another day. But I have a whole conspiracy theory about the Blood Ravens secretly being sons of Lorgar and not sons of Magnus. There's old school Calgar. There he is with his banner. That's Captain Sicarius. That is old Cato Sicarius as he originally appeared, with his bald head and lightning claw. And he has his own proper model these days, but yeah. There's old Tiggy. There's Tigurius. There's Chaplain Cassius, and a regular Chaplain who's all in blue. Look at that, he's not wearing black armour, he's wearing blue. Quite unusual. The old metal librarian Terminator. More Terminators. Look at these guys, they are gorgeous. The old metal Terminators with the bright paint jobs, with Ultramarines with red bolters. Oh yes, I like some Ultramarines with red bolters, I do, I must say. And those paper banners as well. Wonderful stuff. But anyway, the reason this is the best Space Marine Codex is in here. Chapter traits. Now, in 8th edition you have the custom chapter tactics thing. This is like that, only much, much, much better. Far more in-depth. There's a whole thing here. So you have these chapter traits that you can pick for your Space Marine army. And the idea is that you make them up yourself. There's a few examples provided for chapters of legend, yeah, like the Raven Guard, Salamanders, Imperial Fists, White Scars, Blood Ravens, Iron Hands, Crimson Fists. They're all here, and they've got their selected traits and stuff available for you if you just want to plug and play. You'll notice the Ultramarines are not in this list. There's a very good reason for that. I shall explain. The way this worked was that you picked traits and you picked drawbacks to your chapter. So your chapter, if you wanted to customize your chapter tactics, you would pick some good stuff and you would pick some bad stuff so that your chapter had advantages and disadvantages, because you couldn't specialize overly in one area without one other area of your chapter being a bit neglected as a result. So if you're playing as the White Scars and you've got lots and lots of bikes and lots of bike tactics and your whole chapter is built around bike combat effectively, that necessarily means that your competence in, say, siege warfare is going to suffer a bit because all of your focus and training is being spent on bikes and fast hit and run tactics and stuff like that. So then you would take drawbacks to essentially pay for your buffs. And what was interesting about this was that there was a certain amount of drawbacks and advantages you could take depending on how divergent from the Codex Astartes your chapter was. You could decide if they were minorly, just a little bit divergent from the Codex, or if they were mega divergent from the Codex, like they used it as toilet paper. And the bigger the divergences you got, so the bigger the advantages you got, the bigger the drawbacks got as a result of that. And the Ultramarines, you'll notice they didn't appear in here. The reason for that is because the Ultramarines in 4th edition, they honour the teachings of the Codex, which means that the Ultramarines, being as they are, or as they were back then at least, the jack of all trades, masters of none, able to do any kind of combat, but not being able to do it to the same effectiveness as some other chapters, you know? Like, they can do everything in equal measure, but necessarily that means they're not going to be as good at bikes as the White Scars, or they're not going to be as good at sieges as the Imperial Fists, and so on and so forth. You know, they're not going to be as sneaky as the Raven Guard, but the upside to that is the Ultramarines were relatively good at everything, as opposed to really good at one thing and really bad at another thing. And so that was how it worked. If you played Ultramarines, you got no bonuses, but you also got no drawbacks, because you follow the Codex Astartes and you don't diverge from it. And that was how it worked. And that's one of the reasons this is my favourite Space Marines Codex, because it nailed Ultramarines. Unsurprising, as I said, because it was written by Graham McNeill, who wrote the Ultramarines novels, so he knew what he was talking about. But that's why it was my favourite Codex. There's a bunch of other reasons too, because there's loads of really cool additional, like, equipment options and stuff you can take in here. You can do cool stuff like Iron Hands in this edition could have sergeants in Terminator armor and regular squads, which was really fun. They could make their Warlord a Tech Marine. You know, like they could have a Tech Marine, but like a buffed up, mega good Tech Marine who would lead the army as a captain and stuff like that. There was loads of really good stuff in here. It would take me all day to go through this and explain it all, but it was so good, so good. This whole system, I'd love to have this back again. I'd love to have this in 9th edition. It probably won't happen, but it would be so good to have this kind of system back again. Because it really, for me, nailed exactly how Space Marines should feel as an army. Basically, particularly Ultramarines as well. Because nowadays, they just make Ultramarines really good at everything. That's sort of what they do. They can't come up with a decent idea for them, so they just give them the best rules in the book and then call it a day. You know, but in this edition, they really got it right, I feel. They made them jacks of all trades, but masters of none. Which certainly was how they portrayed at the time in the narrative. So there you go. Codex Space Marines 4th edition. Flipping great. I think it's really good. Book number 3, Imperial Guard, Codex 3.5 edition. I say 3.5 because, like the Chaos one, it was the second 3rd edition Codex that Imperial Guard got, and it coincided with the release of Plastic Aliens in all their glory and many, many, many schemes. And of course all the other regiments, as you can see, Valhallans, Mordians, Talon, Katachans. Many regiments that you don't see these days. Characters you don't see these days, like Captain Chenkov. He's no longer around, neither is Captain Al-Rahim. Poor Kel is dead as well. Jaren Kel, he's dead. And Creed is missing. Along with most of the Guard kits are missing, I suppose, these days too, but hey. Yeah. This is when Plastic Aliens launched. basically. Although, they still use the old Lehman Russes. You see those turrets? With the side bits poking out? Yeah, those are the old school turrets. Instead of the new turrets we have nowadays. More Black Legion. Hey, there's my boys. Potentially, maybe, if I decide to do them. Painting guides. That's the thing. Funny thing this, actually. They don't put painting guides in the codexes anymore. They do put them in the Age of Sigmar battle tomes, oddly enough, I've noticed. If you look in the Age of Sigmar books, they have painting guides in them, but the 40k codexes don't anymore. Odd. Don't really know why that is. But hey. Now this was a wonderful book. This one really captured my imagination, this one. This, alongside... Look at those Valhallans. Nice. This, alongside the Gaunt's Ghost novels... Oh, that's artwork. This, alongside the Gaunt's Ghost novels, was what really sold me on Imperial Guard back in the day. My brother actually collected some Imperial Guard. I didn't, though. Mostly because he did, and we didn't want the same army. But also, Imperial Guard were mega expensive to collect back then. You know, don't want to be all sort of, oh, the good old days, because in the good old days, Imperial Guard were punitively expensive to collect because the sheer amount of kits you had to get by to make a single troop's choice was slightly absurd. I need to plug the cable back in. Hold on. Sorry, I was getting more low battery warnings popping up in the screen and obscuring everything. But yes, lovely artwork in this book. This book is awesome. Partly because the artwork is really good. Because prior to this, the artwork was a lot more stylized, and nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's lovely artwork in the old original 3rd edition Imperial Guard Codex. But this was about the time when a gentleman called Karl Kopinski joined the art team over at Warhammer, and he started doing this stuff. This really kind of ultra-realistic, gritty, sort of like almost a photograph depictions. Like it would look good in an Osprey military history book, you know. He started doing these sort of depictions of the 40k universe, and it really jumped off the page to me because it went from being this, and again, nothing wrong with the highly stylized stuff in the past, but this suddenly made him jump off the page and seem like a real thing to me. It made everything suddenly seem all so much more plausible when the artwork started to look a bit more, I say realistic. There's a giant, massive space cube behind them, and there are dudes shouting and waving flags around. Not that realistic, but you know what I mean. Like visually. Oh yes, remember this 2-page spread. Unfortunately, most of these models are copy pasted with Photoshop, so. The Games Workshop Cadian army is not actually that big. Still, it gets the job done. Shows you roughly how big a Imperial Guard regiment actually would look if you got it all out in one place. It's pretty huge, isn't it? Yeah, more lovely artwork. Undoubtedly, you would have seen a lot of this artwork all over the place because it's been reprinted many, many times over the years. But wonderful, wonderful stuff. This is some of the slightly older stuff. This is some of the earlier stuff. These are a bunch of Mordians, I think. Again, gorgeous image though. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying it was a relatively new thing at the time, and I loved it. Mordians being Mordians. Although this image really confused me because you've got the Mordians here, but you've also got like what quite blatantly look like 8-pointed Chaos Stars on seemingly the same side. Something odd going on in this battlefield. Very strange indeed. I'm not sure quite what to make of that. I was confused by that back in the day, and I'm still confused by it now. There's some Valhallans. There's some old school Cadians. Again, beautiful, beautiful paintings, obviously. But you can tell there's a difference in style. There you go, there's a classic. That one made it to the front cover of the book. Yeah, and there's Gaunt's Ghosts. There's me guys, along with an excerpt from First and Only by Dan Abnett. They just straight up stuck it in the book. Because why not? Get you hooked on the novels, that's for sure. This is where I first read about the Gaunt's Ghost, and I read this a little bit, and I was like, ooh, gosh, those novels look interesting, and I started reading them. The narrative in this book as well is really good too. All this stuff, because it's a lot less dry and uninteresting than the more modern codexes, because it was all. I think it was Graham McNeill again. This one, you know, I think it might have been Graham McNeill again. There you go, cover art, Carl Kopinski. Written by Andy Chambers, Pete Haynes, Andy Hoare, Phil Kelly, and Graham McNeill. Right, so yeah, quite a few big names on this one then. But the narrative in this one was really nice because it was written from like an in-universe perspective. It's all written as if an Imperial scribe had written it. So a lot of it is like, it talks about here the origins and history of the Imperial Guard, and a lot of it is basically the author shrugging and going, we're not really sure where the Imperial Guard came from because it's so long ago and none of the records still survive. And it goes on a bit like that. It's not sort of this dry third-person perspective. It's all written as if it was written by someone who actually lives in the 40k universe, which makes it so much more engaging to read, I found, personally. But hey, oh yeah, you want to see some of the troops choice madness here? Look at this. You needed in 4th edition that one HQ choice, compulsory. See it here, one HQ choice and 2 troops choices. And do you want to know what a troops choice looked like? This is what a troops choice looked like. This squad, and this command squad with a platoon commander. Those 3 units there, that was one troops choice. So you had to do that again over here, and then this overall company command squad, and that was your bare minimum. That was your bare minimum. That is like 6-7 boxes of miniatures you had there just to get the bare minimum that you needed to play Imperial Guard. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. When I played with my brother at the time, we just house ruled it. We basically said, sod that, and we just let him take whatever. You know, we let him take a command squad and 2 infantry squads, and we said that was his compulsory 2 troops choices and 1 HQ, because it was ludicrous otherwise. The amount of stuff you had to buy, it was stupid. So that's a good example of the good old days not being that good, but nevertheless, most of the rest of the book is still awesome. Oh look, Kazakin! I miss these guys so much. The old Kazakin, they were cool, and they're really old stormtroopers. No Tempestus Scions here. We just had stormtroopers, which looked like this. They are looks like I think they're Steel Legion guys. These guys, judging by the paint scheme. There you go. There's a tech priest, because that's what the AdMech were back then. They would consisted of basically this tech priest and his servitors. That was the extent of the AdMech representation on the tabletop, and then later on, obviously, they made them into a proper faction. There's all the different regiments that used to be available. You won't see any Vostroyans in this book because they weren't out yet. They came out in 5th edition. But yeah. Funny to think, actually, that these Catachans were still relatively new when this book came out. And they're super old and everyone hates them. Yeah. But anyway, those great big tanks. Those poor orcs are in a lot of trouble, methinks. But yeah, the other cool thing about this was, oh, there's a cool diagrammy bit in the back here. The Third War for Armageddon. Oh, and this bit here. Notes and orders and stuff, just stuffed in the back of the book. Yeah, great stuff, love that. Oh yes, and the glossary of terms, Imperial Guard slang. Amasec, a widely available and highly alcoholic beverage distilled from wine. Bleed out, to die of blood loss before medical attention can be given. Blunt, a sanctioned psyker slang for non-telepath. Microbead, also microbead link, microbead intercom, small short-range Vox system for intertrooper communications in the field, usually a small earplug with a tiny wire-mouthed stalk, generally only found on regiments from civilized or industrial worlds. Multi-key, a universal key or lockpick. 970s, the Imperial Guard issue entrenching tool. Spade, basically. Savlar, thief or drug addict. Screamer killer, Tyrannid Carnifex genus. Shell, carapace armour. Slap, disciplined by a senior officer for minor infraction, possession of unauthorised publications, for instance. A spook, a Tyrannid lictor. Torch, flamer. Toy soldiers, glory boys, stormtroopers. Tube charges. 20cm approximate long metal tubes filled with explosives for demolition work or grenade site use. Twist, Imperial slang for a mutant. Could read this all day. Wonderful, wonderful world-building stuff in there. Here are some of the other regiments. There's the old Death Corps Krieg. You got the Harakoni Warhawks. You got Kanak Skulltakers. Terax Guard. They were like mini commissars. Savlar Chemdogs. Look like super villains. Katchan Jungle Fighters, obviously. You got Steel Legion, Mordians, Tanith First and Only. There you go. They actually had rules. The old Tanith. They had models too. Gaunt, Commissar Gaunt actually had rules in this book. Speaking of rules, this was the other thing that made them really cool. There was, we talked about the chapter tactics thing in the Space Marine book. Well, the Guard had their own equivalent of that, regimental doctrines, which allowed you to customize what types of units you could take and what types of equipment you could take. So, for example, you could take special equipment, like chem inhalers, or Camellia line. So you could take camo cloaks, basically, on all of your infantry to make them harder to hit. You could take carapace armor, so you could upgrade your trooper's armor to like a 4+ armor save instead of the 5+ flak armor. Cyber enhancement, warrior weapons, so you could have close combat guard if you wanted to. Like those Kanak skull takers we saw on the back there with their big axes. You could totally make that a thing. Skills and drills. Diehards, Mind, Discipline, Independent Commissars. Close order drill. Mordian stuff, style that is. That light infantry. Sharpshooters, Xenofighters, veterans. Grenadiers, mechanized, drop troops. Oh, there was so much stuff in here. You could customize and build a regiment of your own making, of your own design, with your own rules that you wanted and your own special equipment. Like if I was doing Vostroyans like this back then, I'd probably give them all carapace armor to represent those extra, armored bits they have on them. Like you see, a lot of them have got gauntlets and big shoulder pads and the chainmail and all that sort of gubbins. I'd probably give them carapace armor to represent that. And I'd probably give them grenadiers so that they could take the Ironsides. So they can include stormtrooper squads as troops. There you go, see? But they can't deep strike or infiltrate if you do that. So yeah, I'd probably do maybe close order drill as well. So if they're tucked in tight next to each other, they have benefits. Yeah, jungle fighters is a whole thing as well. Get many bonuses for being jungle fighters. Hardened fighters. Yeah, loads of great stuff in here. Love to see all this stuff come back too. Probably won't, but I'd love to see it come back, because honestly the custom regiment stuff in the Psychic Awakening book in 8th edition is pants. It's so crap compared to this. It's a bit of a joke. None of them are worth taking over just regular regimental doctrines. They're just terrible. They're rubbish. Some of the tank ones are okay, but aside from that, they're generally a bit shite, I'm afraid. But this stuff was awesome. It was really cool. I think there was one in here that allowed you to take extra psychers or something, wasn't it? Restricted troops, yeah. You could take extra mutants like Ogrins and Ratlings and stuff. Great book. Bloody fantastic book. That's 3 of my favourite 40k codexes of all time. Those, the Imperial Guard 3.5, the Chaos 3.5, and the Space Marines 4th edition. They were good. They were very good. Like I said, though, I do love 8th edition, and I'm looking forward to 9th edition. I don't want to be all, the old days were so much better than these days about it, but, there was some good stuff in these back in the day. There was some good shit here. And I do miss it sometimes. Right, I think that's about it, honestly. I don't think I've got anything else to talk about for now. I've got Skaven in the works, but I'm going to save that for a different video. I thought about including the Skaven in here, but I think I'll save them for a future hobby vlog, so I can have a look at them in a bit more detail and show you some of the conversions I've been doing and so on and so forth. I will do more of these in the future. I will keep you updated on the progress of these fellas as I try out my plans for this stuff and these guys and that thing, and we'll see how we get on. And I welcome your feedback, of course, especially on the whole Chaos question. Should I start working on some Black Legion, do you reckon? Ultimately, it's my decision, damn it, but I do like to hear some input. Yeah, I'll keep you updated as I keep doing more stuff at random. I'm all over the place, as I said, with my hobby at the minute. I'm just painting this thing, and then I'm painting that thing, and then I'm painting that thing, and it's just... I find I get more done in the long run if I just follow whatever weird mercurial whim I happen to be on at the time. Like, I'll wake up one day and be like, ooh, fancy doing a bit of Skaven today, so I'll just do it. I'll just do the Skaven, I'll do what I want to do instead of doing what I think I have to do. And if I do that, I get more done in the long run. Because if I feel like I have to, like, oh god, I really want to do some Skaven, but I have to paint a squad of Vostroyans or something, or I have to paint a squad of Space Marines. If I do that, then I end up procrastinating and putting it off and not doing it. So, that's how it works for me. Unless I've got a deadline. If I've got an actual game coming up where I need a specific unit done for it, then I manage to get it done. When I have no deadlines, because, for example, there might be a pandemic, and therefore a lockdown, and therefore nobody to play with, this is what happens. I go all over the place and end up doing all sorts of stuff. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. You seem to enjoy the other videos, so I hope you enjoy this one. And I'll see you again very soon with more of these shenanigans. Toodaloo.